Hi everyone and good evening. Welcome. If this is your first time joining me live on Instagram, I'm Shauna K. Lester. I'm the founder of Memorable Essay and I'm the creator of the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator. And we're going to have a good little discussion tonight, and it's quite the week, I think, to have a discussion in. It's such a big week, such an emotional week because it's match week. So Instagram is telling people that I'm here. Thank you, Instagram. Because it's match week, it's such a big week and such an emotional week. So I'm definitely still wishing everyone the best as we go through the soap, and just being excited for everyone who's going to find out on Friday where is going to be your new home. So I'm going to be showing up over the next couple of days to have some conversations with you as we get into Red Clover, as we get into the new season for the next round of match applications. You're going to be seeing more of me as we're having more conversations. And tonight we are talking about different shifts that you need to make, big mindset shifts that you need to make as you are applying to the match. And so I have notes. I always keep my notes so that we can make sure that we cover everything, and we're just going to get into 4 of them tonight here on Instagram. So the first mindset shift that I talk about, and you'll often hear me talk about, is seeing yourself as an underdog in this process. Just tonight, I was having a discussion with a former client from I think 7 years ago, and we were actually talking about how without IMGs, we're pretty sure that the entire healthcare infrastructure in the United States would fall apart, especially when it comes to primary care. And so I think that it's easy to look on this statistic of, okay, 6 out of 10 IMGs match, which typically happens in any given match year, and see yourself as an underdog in the process. And I think that the cost of this, so for each of the mindset shifts, I'm going to break it down and talk to you about what the costs of this are. The cost of this particular mindset is that you go into the process with a lot of anxiety, I think a lot of undue anxiety, a lot of nervousness that kind of pulls your energy away from areas where it could go instead. Because if you think about it, 6 out of 10, even 5 out of 10, those are actually very reasonable odds of being successful. And so I think that the mindset shift needs to be not that you are in this process as an underdog, but that you're in this process as a very valuable asset, and you have pretty reasonable odds of being successful in the process. And your focus now needs to be not on how much of an underdog you are, but on how you can be more strategic about making these very reasonable odds even more reasonable in your favor, right? So this one I think can be a little bit harder to imagine because it is quite a subtle shift, but it is not subtle if you think about it long enough. It is a major shift to go from seeing this as a process in which you just have such low, next to zero odds of being successful, to thinking of it as one in which you have pretty good odds of being successful. And my job now is to educate myself about the process and to be very strategic to see how I can make these pretty reasonable odds work in my favor the first time around. All right. So that's our very first mindset shift that I want you to think about. The other one is seeing yourself as a student. And this is a favorite of mine because I think it's just something that happens automatically when you're in school for so long, for 20 odd years, maybe even 30 odd years. When you're training, it's very easy to see yourself as a trainee and as a student, right? What that often results in, though, when we think about the cost of that particular mindset, it's an over-identification with your grades. So whether those are your grades in terms of your USMLE scores, your grades in terms of your med school grades. This is not to say don't get solid grades and don't get excellent grades, but we all know by now that those are just one part, right? Grades are just one part, one slice of the pie, one piece of the puzzle. And when you have this over-identification with your grades, not only do you sometimes fail to look at all the other things that will make you a pretty strong applicant, but then there is also missing out on seeing yourself as a professional. Seeing yourself as the young entry-level professional who you are, and seeing the match process as a job process, which is really what this is, right? This is a gigantic hiring process. It really is just a very sophisticated job search. And when you don't see yourself as a professional who's going after a job, you fail to see that you have unique value outside of your grades. There are things, experiences, habits, attributes, skills that you have that grades can never capture, that you can put forward in your application in terms of explaining your unique value. And if to you see yourself as your grades only, you're never going to be able to find your unique value and to express it. And if you can't express and communicate to programs what your unique value is, then that's a problem, right? You're probably just not going to match. And so I really want you to make that mindset shift from, okay, I'm being a student, or I am a student applying to the match, to I am a young professional applying to the match, and what are all the things that I need to do as a part of this job process. Another big one is the mindset that the competition is with others. And I think in the age of social media, some of us grew up off of social media, for which I'm so grateful, especially now watching other people grow up literally on social media. For those of us who grew up off of social media, we still, kind of have an inkling of what that's like, and just understand the idea of comparisonitis, right? Of people scrolling, and you're probably not doing that as a match applicant, but you might do it in your mind, comparing yourself to this story you read on Facebook, to this story you read in a forum on Student Doctor, to this thing you saw over on some other blog. And that again is taking away the energy from your focus on yourself. And this is probably my favorite point out of all four, because what I have found working with applicants applying to the match for the past decade is that the competition really is with yourself. And I know that that's something that kind of floats around out there, in the age of motivation. But for the match process especially, it really is about your mental health, your resilience, your village, your support system, how many times you can get up. It's sort of like tennis, I guess. It's like a tennis sport sort of thing where it's gonna be you, right? Or track and field, for those of you who love track and field. It's team, but it really is like you against you. How long can you last? And I think when you think of others as the competition, you focus on them, and you don't think about how do you design a care system and a support system for yourself, because you're competing with the version of yourself that existed last year. And for you to match, you're going to have to become a very different version of her, a very different version of him, a very different version of they. Whatever your pronouns are, you are going to evolve into a whole new person. And so it's very important for you to know that, hey, I'm competing against the person who never used to be able to walk into a room and say her name and tell people what she's about. Hey, I'm competing with the version of myself that can't write a strong personal statement. I'm competing with the version of myself who doesn't know what a CV is. I'm competing with the version of myself who I stay down when I get knocked down, sort of thing, right? So I really want for you to shift and think, okay, I'm not competing against 13,000 applicants. I'm competing against the me who's going to get overwhelmed and just give up on this step exam and never do it. And how can I get all the resources that I need to make sure that I go through this process of personal development. Hey, so we have Lori and Chris and Lejeune. Hi guys. How do I compete against this version of myself that existed, that I don't want to say needs to die, right? You're not going to die to that version of yourself, but that version of yourself is going to grow, right? And your competition is really against that person. And then the last one, of course, in my experience, is memorable essay that I really want to talk about, because I see this, year after year. And again, this is a conversation that has been happening not just with applicants from this year, but with those who we've supported in former years, who they're always really invested to, and they kind of want to know, how everybody did in a given match year. But I think one of those really big shifts that need to happen is the thought process that getting expert help or getting professional help and support, that is expensive. And the reason that this needs to shift, or what I think or I know the cost of this is, apart from the nervousness and the overwhelm and doing it all by yourself in confusion, is that you don't know the cost of what you don't know. You also don't know the cost of who you don't know. And hopefully you guys are, networking and doing all of that by yourself. But it doesn't necessarily have to come from memorable essay, and I totally mean this because everyone is not a fit for us either. But there comes a point where you're going to have to stop Googling 100 things and reading 2,000 forums and just growing more and more confused, right? This is a process, as I said before, where you are competing against the version of yourself who you were, and you need to grow. And that is going to come from you having professional support, right? And what you don't want is for what you don't know to cost you, right? So you want to think of this process and think of yourself as something that is worth investing in, because not getting help is what is expensive, right? Not knowing what you need to know, and God forbid, I have no problem with people reapplying to the match. I think they're good odds of matching if you turn out needing to apply more than once. But I really hate to see people caught in the cycle of like 3, 4, 5, I even know 8 match applications. That just does not need to be you, right? So if you had a chance to join tonight, thank you so much. And I'm just going to do a really quick recap. And as I said, we'll be talking some more in the weeks to come. But I just wanted to start by talking about mindset, because it really all starts there. And so we spoke about seeing yourself as an underdog in this process, which you're not. One day I hope somebody will figure out the figures on how much money IMGs are saving the US healthcare system. So you are definitely not an underdog in this process, right? You are a prime piece of, holding this healthcare puzzle together. You have very reasonable odds. On average, 6 out of 10. If you had a 6 out of 10 chance of winning the lottery, you would buy your ticket. You'd probably even spend, I don't know, your child's money on it or something. So you have very reasonable odds, and your job is really to think about how to be more strategic in increasing those odds, right? Not being fixated on how low your odds are, because compared to other things, it's really not that low, although it is competitive. You also want to switch from seeing yourself as a student, and this is even important when you match, because now you're going to start presenting to work like a professional, right? And figuring out your career path. So try to stop seeing yourself as a student and seeing yourself as a professional, and figure out how you can really manage this career that is ahead of you. And one of the big things in that puzzle is learning how to start communicating the unique value that you bring to the table as a professional, because nobody's ever going to do that for you. And nobody is ever gonna, just offer you a raise just because. Most bosses and most hospital assistants will not do that. So you have to start seeing yourself as a professional with unique and holistic value, and not as somebody who is the step score or the med school grades, because that's not it. And you'll always find people with strong grades and people with not as strong grades matching, etc. Because you are a professional, and what you bring is a whole package. The other thing that we're going to shift is seeing other people as the competition, thinking of their grades, reading stats over and over. We want to know the stats, but we're not going to fixate on them, because the competition is not with your friend or your med school colleague who got 253, all around. The competition is with yourself that got a 222, and you need to wake up and listen to podcasts on how to have a more resilient mindset. You need to learn the art of building relationships, not just networking. You need to learn how to present yourself in person when you get the opportunity to speak for yourself, because you now know that the competition is with yourself, and growing into the version of yourself who's going to match, have a great residency experience, and have a medical career that actually makes them feel fulfilled and not burnt out and resentful, right? We're going to evolve into that person. And the last mindset shift that we need to make is to stop seeing professional help as expensive. There is going to be professional and expert help on every level, if it's even a friend or a friend of a friend, right? Because what you don't know is costing you. And you don't want to get caught on the hamster wheel of application. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please share it with your colleagues, share with your friends. If you're applying, on the low, send it to them in their messages. And I look forward to talking to you more over the coming weeks. If you're still going through match week, wherever you are, you're an involved professional, and I trust that you're going to take the time that you need to figure out what to do and go again. And if you're celebrating, I trust that you're going to find out on Friday where is your home. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.